is Maxwell, and I will be presenting on the history and role of epidemiology. Basically, I'm going to go through a little bit of definition of epidemiology, and then I'll go through an example of the historical importance, because there's so many different beginning points of epidemiology that one example will cover it. I will talk about diseases noted throughout history, because disease has always been around with humankind, and epidemiology hasn't really been a field that has been existent back then. Cholera epidemic will be the example that I'll use. The role of an epidemiologist. I will use examples of epidemiology in society throughout history, biological warfare, zoonotic disease, and even epidemiology today is what I'll finish with. And I'll tell you the difference between pandemic and epidemic. Epidemiology is a field of medical science. They search for the cause and the origin of disease. And epidemics has actually grown, epidemiology has actually been a field that's grown over years. It used to be just epidemics, and now it's also conditions, and example would be headaches or obesity. Those are now included in epidemiology. It's the study of human and animal populations. It's not just people in New York. It's going to be the animals that might affect the people in New York. Epidemiology is also the need to develop an understanding with the effects on the human population, how the epidemic may spread. It might stay in one area, or it might spread out to many different countries. Ways that epidemiology predicts the spread of disease is through mathematical models or physics, and they'll use SIR models, which I'll go over that in later slides. They also help develop treatments, cures, and the prevention methods for any disease, and they spread disease awareness. The historical importance, I have a couple examples. Malaria was documented by the Chinese back in 2700 BC. There was also Hippocrates, which is known as the father of medicine. Elephantitis was seen by the ancient Egyptians. Calcified eggs that cause schistosomiasis were also found in ancient Egyptian art. And then rabies, Babylonians, polio, Egyptian art as well. There's a lot of diseases depicted in Egyptian art. So it just kind of shows you how far back these diseases go. They may not know what it is, but they describe some of the symptoms, and that kind of helped with having a timeline for how far back these things might have originated. And cancer has been well known for quite a while. The cholera example. It was actually identified by John Snow, who is known as one of the fathers of epidemiology. As I told you, there are many examples of where epidemiology may have started, but John Snow was one of the ones that deducted different reasonings for why the disease was spreading, how it was caused, and what you can do to stop it. He was a British doctor in London, and he had seen a couple different cholera epidemics before, but he uncovered that cholera was not airborne. It was waterborne. Everyone at that time period thought it was airborne. But he had experience with studying cadavers and seeing, and regular live people, seeing how anesthetics affected the body and the lungs. And he was able to tell you that cholera is not affecting the respiratory system. And cholera was also one of the ones that was found way back in history by the Sanskrit, Chinese, and the Grecian people. Cholera causes violent symptoms. It causes your body to think that water and nutrients, different salts in the body, are bad for you. So you'll expel all of them, and that's eventually how you die, is you're deprived of those nutrients and hydration. The spread of bacteria was found in fecal contaminated water. At that time, their bathroom and their water source were not two different things. They were all the same. So people would go to the bathroom, and the fecal matter would go sink through the soil and into the water supply, and the bacteria in there would infect the water. And the Vibrio cholera bacteria spreads quickly through water. Dr. Snow monitored the water supplies. He noticed that people in the cities were only infected in certain areas where there was these water wells. And some of them were infected and some of them weren't. And if someone from one water well went to another one and started living there, all of a sudden cholera is spreading over there too. So he monitored the water supplies and the drinking habits and found out that cholera is in the water. He didn't know that it was bacteria, but he knew that somehow people were getting sick from the water. This led to Robert Koch and Filippo Caccini, who were scientists studying the bacteria. They were one of the many scientists that dissected human beings that were victims of cholera and found out that there was bacteria in their intestines. And then they took this under a microscope and found out that it was actually what the Vibrio cholera looked like, and were able to be able to find out that the bacteria caused you to react a certain way, to think that water and salts are very harmful to your body, and they were able to find treatments for this type of thing. Increased sanitation procedures started occurring throughout these cities. Once they found out the water was infected, they were able to distinguish that you need to move your bathroom elsewhere because it's infecting the water supply, and people weren't using the water anymore. He ended up shutting off the tap. People were using the water tap, and once he shut that off, that's how he was able to correlate that is the water supply that's infected, and these are the people that are getting infected because of it. After all this, they were able to develop vaccinations to help. It's not really a cure, but it's a prevention of cholera, and the antibiotics help you get rid of the virus as well. Oral hydration therapy, mixture of water, salt, and sugar, and it's used in combination with antibiotics, and it was able to rehydrate the victims of cholera, and people weren't, the fatality rate was definitely steadily decreasing. The role of an epidemiologist, they're not just making hypotheses, they're also monitoring the prevalence of disease, they're determining policies and programs that will help you further control the prevention of disease and epidemics. They promote awareness. Everyday choices affect whether or not you will contract a disease or some kind of virus. They're making sure doctors are making accurate diagnosis of people. And again, developing models and statistics to help people understand how the disease will spread and whether or not it's going to die down over time. SIR models, you might learn about this in calculus. Susceptible is the S, infected is the R, and recovered is, or the I, and recovered is the R. If you look at a graph, you can see the infected number, you can see the susceptible number, and you see the recovered number. This type of model will help you determine whether or not the disease will gradually die down, or if people are going to start getting more and more infected. It's really helpful for predicting how fast the disease will spread and how quickly you can get rid of it. Biological warfare is one of the examples that epidemiologists are used in throughout society. There are terrorists out there that will use bioterrorism as ways to take down a nation. And it's really easy because you can take down a whole country from the inside. People are really, really susceptible to disease, and especially ones that they haven't encountered before. Example, Native Americans and the smallpox that the colonists brought in on blankets. These Native Americans have never been exposed to smallpox before, so they took to it real quickly, and it spread like wildfire. If epidemiologists are able to identify the disease and trace it back to the origin, they're also able to find treatments for it. They can quarantine people and make sure that it doesn't spread more, and the risk for the spread of disease will definitely be reduced or just halted. You can get rid of it. The anthrax attacks caused by the bacteria Bacillus anthracis, the spores are naturally found in the soil, but they're dormant. Usually animals will pick it up, they'll ingest it, or they'll breathe it in, and once it's in your body, they'll become active, they'll feed off your nutrients, and then if you eat raw or undercooked meat, or you are exposed to the soil, then you're infected with the anthrax virus. But someone was using it as a bioterrorist attack and put the spores into envelopes and mailed them out to people, and that's how bioterrorist attacks occur, is that they actually do it on purpose in order to infect a group of people. The good thing about anthrax is that it's not contagious between individuals. You can only get it through breathing in and being exposed to the animals, the food, the water source. Tularemia was also thought to be a biological warfare attack, but it's actually also naturally found in rats, rodents, rabbits. And there was a study done on tularemia to decide whether it was a naturally occurring disease epidemic or if it was actually purposely done as a bioterrorist attack. They found that it was naturally occurring. Tularemia was an indigenous epidemic for the area, so they just determined that it wasn't a bioterrorist attack. And pneumonic plague, which is extremely contagious between humans, it's a lung infection, and that's one of the ones that you don't want to encounter in a bioterrorist attack because it will spread quickly and it's hard to contain. Zoonotic disease is another example of how epidemiologists are used today. Zoonosis is a disease that's transmissible through animal to human contact. Some well-known transmissible diseases are H1N1, H5N1, Ebola, and HIV. HIV actually came from simians originally, and because apes and monkeys have such similar DNA to us, it was able to mutate and it became HIV. Ebola, it was also traced back to monkeys, but it was recently found that bats are possible reservoirs. So the virus will be held in bats, and then they infect apes and antelopes and other wild animals, and then they affect humans. It's traced back to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where it's still kind of contained. There was recently an infection of Ebola in Guinea and Liberia. There's an outbreak right now. You can see it on the news. The CDC reports 122 cases of infected people, and 80 people have died. The Ministry of Health and World Health Organization, which are well known for epidemiology, they're teaming up to contain the virus and treat everyone that's victims, because it is possible to survive, but 90% of victims of Ebola actually die. And animals as indicators. I have another table right here, because animals can actually be used as bioterrorism indications. I have a couple examples. The anthrax. Anthrax can be determined through sheep and cattle. There's evidence that an anthrax epidemic may occur through them. And then sheep and cattle can also help spread the disease. And then plague, you can see it in cats. And the same thing, cats and dogs can also help spread the disease. So it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. And then down here, botulism, no animals could tell you, but yes, wildlife can spread the disease. So you won't be able to tell the disease is spreading, but you can get it from them. So I was just going to use this table as an example to show you how animals can be indicators. Ebola, highly destructive and fatal disease. It's terrifying. It's really difficult to determine in the early stages of Ebola because you just have normal symptoms, arthritis, headache, throwing up, all those kinds of things. It's caused by a virus called Ebola virus. And there's a couple different strains of it, but Ebola virus is the most common one. Symptoms include the heavier symptoms: fever, vomiting, and diarrhea, hemorrhaging through the skin, orifices, and within the body. This is when it's too late. Very few people are able to survive by the time that it's identified through the really heavy symptoms. Again, it's still remaining in Africa for the most part. There's been a couple infections in the US and other countries, but it was so well contained or someone died and it wasn't able to spread. So we're lucky for that. And here's the Ebola virus right there. And then I had a picture from the CDC showing bats as reservoirs. It doesn't mean that bats can affect humans, but it's just showing that that's probably where the Ebola virus starts. And then it infects antelopes and affects apes, and then humans. And then it goes around human to human. Pandemic versus epidemic. It differs by range, but both these words are used interchangeably. An endemic is actually the smallest version. It would be an indigenous, native disease or epidemic. It's home to one area. It's common for that area, specific for a location. An epidemic is when one population is infected. So an endemic and epidemic can sort of be the same thing, but an epidemic can also be for a population that doesn't have that disease that's native to that area. And pandemic is when it's more than one geographic location, could be several nations, several countries. Pandemic is definitely the worst word for this one. Epidemiology today. There are 3 different huge organizations for epidemiology. We have the Center for Disease Control, the National Institution of Health, and the World Health Organization. All of these are teaming up. You see them all the time and you may not realize it, but they're the ones that report on the disease, and they like the Ebola outbreak that's out now, they report how many deaths, how many cases. They tell you how you can treat disease and how to prevent it and what you should look out for, symptoms. HIV and AIDS were first recognized in the 1980s, but today it's treatable thanks to epidemiology. Not curable yet, but treatable. People are able to live with it. Polio is now preventable with vaccinations. People aren't going around paralyzed all the time, and polio also causes death because you get paralyzed with the respiratory system and can't live with that. But now it's preventable. You get these vaccinations when you're a baby or adult. And epidemiology is also for awareness, prevention, and promotion of public health. Nowadays, they're trying to do the obesity and depression route because it's really becoming a big problem in America and the world. And they're coming up with how you can prevent that by exercise. And you see all those commercials out there sponsored by these organizations. It's part of our society. And depression, how you can take medications to help stabilize your hormones and get on the healthy route and be able to live a better lifestyle. And epidemiology is always advancing as a field of medicine. Depression and obesity and anorexia, those weren't always problems in the world. And now they're becoming big problems. We're becoming more aware of it and what we need to do to fix those problems. And so epidemiology is just constantly growing and constantly coming up with how we can fix everything. And my references.
Hey, thank you.